What would you do if the one thing you thought you'd lost forever suddenly appeared before your eyes? This is a story of heartbreak, mystery, and a reunion you'll never forget. Stick around until the end, you won't believe how it all unfolds. And before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear. The courtroom was buzzing with low chatter as Judge William Hendricks, a seasoned man in his early 50s, adjusted his black robe and prepared for the next case. Known for his stern but fair demeanor, William had seen his share of criminals, liars, and the occasional innocent victim. But today felt like any other day in his long career, routine and uneventful. The defendant, Marcus West, was escorted into the courtroom. A tall, wiry man with unkempt hair and weary eyes, Marcus had been charged with multiple counts of theft and trespassing. As the bailiff secured him in the defendant's chair, William glanced at the file on his desk, briefly scanning the charges. It seemed straightforward, another petty criminal caught in the act. But as William lifted his gaze, something unusual caught his attention. Around Marcus's neck hung a silver locket, its delicate engraving shimmering under the fluorescent courtroom lights. William's breath caught in his throat. That locket was unmistakable. It was identical to the one he had given his daughter, Amelia, on her 8th birthday, a treasured keepsake she had worn every day until she disappeared 12 years ago. For a moment, William froze, his professional mask cracking as memories of Amelia flooded his mind. Her laughter, her bright smile, and the way she would proudly show off that locket to anyone who would listen. When she had vanished, taking the light from his life with her, that locket had disappeared too. Pulling himself back to the present, William cleared his throat and called the courtroom to order. State versus Marcus West, he announced, his voice steady but his thoughts racing. The prosecutor rose, presenting the charges against Marcus in a crisp, confident tone. Your Honor, the defendant was apprehended after breaking into a storage unit. Several items were recovered in his possession, and we have clear evidence linking him to other thefts in the area. Marcus sat in silence, his eyes darting around the room but avoiding William's piercing gaze. Mr. West, William began, his voice firm, do you understand the charges against you? Marcus looked up briefly and nodded. Yeah, I understand, he muttered, his tone dismissive. William's gaze lingered on the locket. He couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't a coincidence. As the prosecutor continued detailing the case, William's mind raced with questions. How had Marcus come into possession of something so deeply personal? And more importantly, did he know where it came from? The prosecutor finished, and it was time for Marcus's defense attorney to respond. But before she could begin, William interjected, his voice cutting through the quiet tension in the room. Mr. West, he said, his eyes narrowing, that locket you're wearing, where did you get it? Marcus froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the locket. His expression shifted from indifference to caution. What does it matter? He replied, his tone defensive. It matters, William said sharply, leaning forward. Answer the question. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Marcus. The defendant hesitated, his fingers brushing over the locket as though it offered him some kind of protection. I've had it for years, Marcus said finally. Found it. It's nothing special. William's stomach churned. Found it where? Marcus shrugged. Don't remember. Somewhere. Why does it matter? It matters because it belonged to my daughter, William said, his voice tight. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Marcus's eyes widened, but he quickly masked his surprise. Look, I don't know anything about your daughter. I just found it, okay? That's all. William stared at Marcus, his heart pounding. Could this man hold the key to finding out what happened to Amelia? It had been 12 long years since her disappearance, and every lead had turned into a dead end. He had almost given up hope, until now. Regaining his composure, William addressed the court. We will take a brief recess. As the courtroom emptied, William motioned for the bailiff to escort Marcus back to the holding area. "Make sure he doesn't leave," William ordered quietly. Back in his chambers, William struggled to make sense of his emotions. The sight of that locket had reignited a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years. But it also terrified him. What if this lead went nowhere, just like the others? He reached for the photograph of Amelia that always sat on his desk. In the picture, she was beaming, proudly holding up the silver locket. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I'm not giving up. Not yet." Judge William Hendricks couldn't shake the image of Marcus West's locket. Back in his chambers after the recess, he paced the room, his mind racing with questions and emotions he'd buried for years. Every detail of Amelia's disappearance came rushing back: her last day at school, the frantic search efforts, and the crushing grief that followed when hope began to fade. He sank into his chair, pulling open the desk drawer where he kept a single reminder of his daughter, a photograph of Amelia wearing the very same silver locket. She had been 8 years old when he took the photo, her toothy smile lighting up the frame. He compared it to the mental image of the locket round Marcus's neck. There was no doubt, it was the same. Determined to act, William picked up his phone and called his longtime friend and private investigator, David Millstone. David had been with him through the initial search for Amelia years ago and had never stopped looking, even when others had moved on. "William," David answered, his voice steady, "it's been a while. What's going on?" "There's something I need you to look into," William said, his tone urgent. "The defendant in my courtroom today, Marcus West, he was wearing Amelia's locket." David was silent for a moment, then replied, "Amelia's locket? Are you sure?" "I'm certain," William said firmly. "I need you to find out everything about him, where he's been, who he's been associated with, and most importantly, how he got that locket. Can you do it?" David's voice softened, filled with determination. "Of course. I'll get started right away." Meanwhile, William decided to take matters into his own hands. He arranged for Marcus to be brought to a private interview room, away from the formalities of the courtroom. When Marcus entered, his demeanor was wary, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "Take a seat," William said, his tone neutral but firm. Marcus sat, his hands cuffed in front of him. "What's this about?" "My lawyer ain't here." "You can't just—" "I'm not here to discuss your case," William interrupted, his piercing gaze locking onto Marcus. "I'm here to talk about that locket. I know it didn't just fall into your hands. Tell me where you got it." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I already told you. I found it." "Where?" William pressed, his voice rising slightly. "Be specific." Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing his options. "It was in some abandoned house," he muttered. "Years ago. I don't remember exactly where." William leaned forward, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "That locket belonged to my daughter. She disappeared 12 years ago. If you know anything, anything at all, you need to tell me." Marcus's eyes widened briefly, a flicker of guilt flashing across his face. "Look, I don't know nothing about your daughter," he said defensively. "I swear. I just found it, okay? That's all I know." William studied Marcus closely, searching for any sign of deception. There was something about his body language, the way his hands fidgeted and his eyes avoided contact, that suggested he wasn't telling the full truth. "If that's all you know," William said slowly, "then you won't mind answering a few more questions for the authorities." "What kind of questions?" Marcus asked warily. "The kind that will help us figure out where that locket came from," William said, his voice cold. "Because if you're lying, Marcus, I'll make sure you face the consequences." Marcus swallowed hard but didn't respond. Later that evening, William's phone buzzed. It was David. "I've found something," David said, his tone grim. "It's not much, but it's a start." Marcus spent a lot of time in a rundown neighborhood about 10 years ago. One of the houses he stayed in matches the description of where Amelia was last seen. William's breath caught. You're saying he was there? It's a possibility, David admitted. But here's the thing, there are rumors that the house was connected to a trafficking ring. It was raided a few years after Amelia disappeared, but by then, it was abandoned. The word trafficking made William's blood run cold. Do you think Marcus was involved? It's hard to say, David replied. But if he had any connection to that house, it's worth looking into. I'll dig deeper, but I'd advise you to be careful. If this leads where I think it does, we're dealing with dangerous people. As William hung up the phone, he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. For years, he had clung to the hope that Amelia might still be alive, but the possibility of her being connected to a trafficking ring was almost too much to bear. He glanced at the photograph on his desk once more. Her smile seemed to offer him strength, a reminder of the little girl he had lost, and the promise he had made to never stop searching for her. Hang on, Amelia, he whispered. I'm coming for you. The next morning, Judge William Hendricks arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. Sleep had eluded him, the details of the previous day replayed in his mind over and over. Every time he thought of Marcus West and the locket, a storm of emotions, hope, fear, and anger, swirled within him. He knew this was no ordinary case, and while he was bound by the constraints of the law, this one had become deeply personal. He had to tread carefully, balancing his role as a judge and his desperate need for answers. Marcus was brought to the courthouse holding cell early that morning. His usual defiance was tempered with visible unease after the events of the previous day. William had requested that the interrogation be handled by Detective Laura Grant, a trusted officer who had worked on many sensitive cases. As Laura entered the holding cell, Marcus gave her a wary look. What now? I already told the judge everything I know. Let's go over it again, Laura said firmly, sitting down across from him. Where did you find the locket, Marcus? I told you, Marcus said with irritation. An old house. Place was falling apart. I was just scavenging. Laura leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. The house you're talking about matches the description of a known trafficking site that was raided years ago. Did you know that? Marcus froze, his posture stiffening. I didn't know anything about that, he muttered. Laura didn't let up. You've been seen with people connected to that operation, Marcus. We're looking into your past, and if we find you had anything to do with it, you're going down with them. I wasn't part of anything. Marcus snapped. I just stayed there for a while, okay? I didn't know what went on there. Then why do you still have the locket? Laura pressed. If you just found it, why keep it all these years? Marcus hesitated, his fingers twitching in his lap. Finally, he mumbled, I don't know. It just felt important. Important? Laura repeated. Why? Did someone give it to you? No. Marcus said quickly, too quickly. I found it, that's all. When Laura reported back to William, the judge listened carefully, his jaw tightening as she relayed Marcus's inconsistent answers. He's hiding something, Laura concluded. But I don't think he's the mastermind. He seems like a small-time crook who got tangled up in something bigger. Then we need to figure out what he knows, William said. And we need to move fast. Every second we waste, the trail gets colder. Laura hesitated. There's another angle we can try. The house he mentioned, it was raided, but the case files from that operation might have leads we missed. It's possible someone involved back then is still active now. William nodded. Pull the files. I'll contact someone who might help us connect the dots. By midday, David Millstone called William with a breakthrough. I dug into the house Marcus stayed in, David said. It was a hub for a trafficking ring, but here's the part that'll interest you. There was an informant back then who claimed a child matching Amelia's description was seen there before it was raided. William's heart pounded. Why wasn't this followed up? It was a mess of a case, David explained. The ring scattered before the raid, and the informant disappeared. But get this, there's a name that keeps coming up in connection to the house, Victor Kane. William's grip tightened on the phone. Victor Kane was a notorious criminal with ties to multiple trafficking operations. He had evaded conviction for years, thanks to his money and influence. Is he still active? William asked. Definitely, David replied. And if Marcus had any dealings with him, we're looking at a direct link to the people who took Amelia. That afternoon, William had the locket removed from Marcus and sent to a forensic lab for analysis. He hoped it might hold a clue, something that would confirm the connection to Amelia. When the results came back, William's suspicions deepened. The locket had traces of fingerprints, 2 sets. One belonged to Marcus, but the other was inconclusive. More importantly, the locket contained a tiny folded photograph, carefully hidden in a compartment William hadn't known existed. It was a picture of Amelia. William couldn't wait any longer. He ordered Marcus to be brought back to the interrogation room, this time with both Laura and himself present. William placed the photograph from the locket on the table in front of Marcus. "Explain this," he said, his voice ice-cold. Marcus stared at the picture, his eyes wide with panic. I don't know where that came from," he stammered. "You're lying," William said, his voice rising. "This photograph proves you're connected to what happened to my daughter. If you want any chance at leniency, you'll tell us everything. Now." Marcus's hands shook as he stared at the photo. Finally, he muttered, "I didn't hurt her. I swear. But I know who did." "Who?" Laura demanded. Marcus hesitated, then said the name that made William's blood run cold, Victor Kane. With Marcus's confession, William and Laura realized they were racing against time. If Victor Kane was still active, there was a chance he had vital information, or worse, he could still be holding Amelia. As William left the interrogation room, his resolve hardened. He had spent 12 years searching for answers, and now he was closer than ever. "Amelia," he whispered to himself, gripping the photograph tightly, "I'm coming for you." The name Victor Kane hung in the air like a storm cloud, suffocating and heavy. Judge William Hendricks couldn't shake the wave of anger and desperation washing over him. For years, Kane's name had been whispered in connection with criminal enterprises, but he always managed to escape justice. And now, it seemed, he was the key to finding Amelia, or at least uncovering what had happened to her. Determined to act quickly, William made an urgent call to Detective Laura Grant. "Laura," he said, his voice tense, "Marcus mentioned Victor Kane. We can't ignore this. We need to find him." "I'm already on it," Laura replied. "But Kane is slippery. He doesn't stay in one place for long, and his network protects him. If we're going to take him down, we'll need more than Marcus's word." Laura and her team began sifting through old case files, connecting the dots between Kane's known associates and the abandoned house Marcus had mentioned. William, though officially removed from the investigation, couldn't stay idle. He spent his evenings reviewing every scrap of information he had about Kane, desperate to find a lead. David Millstone, the private investigator, worked in parallel with the police, unearthing details that had been buried in the chaos of years-old investigations. "Kane has a pattern," David told William during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "He sets up operations in secluded locations, using intermediaries to keep his name out of the paperwork. But there's one address that keeps coming up, a storage facility just outside the city. It was mentioned in Marcus's file, and it's been linked to Kane's known activities. Can we search it?" William asked. David shook his head. "Not without a warrant. You'll need Laura to move on this." The next morning, William met with Laura to discuss the storage facility. "David found a possible lead," he said. "It's risky, but if there's even a chance Kane is connected, we can't wait." Laura frowned, considering his words. If we move too quickly, we could blow our chance to catch him. We'll need solid evidence to justify the raid. William hesitated, then handed her the photograph found in the locket. This was hidden inside Amelia's locket. It's proof that Kane, or someone in his network, was connected to her disappearance. Laura studied the photograph, her expression softening. "This is enough to get us started," she said. "I'll push for the warrant, but we'll need backup. If Kane is there, he won't go quietly." By nightfall, the warrant was approved, and Laura's team prepared for the raid. William wasn't supposed to be involved, but he couldn't stay away. From a safe distance, he watched as the police assembled outside the storage facility. The air was electric with tension, every officer acutely aware of the danger they faced. Inside the facility, lights glowed dimly through the windows of a central office. The building itself was a sprawling complex of metal units, most of them locked and unassuming. "Remember," Laura instructed her team, "we're looking for anything connected to Kane's trafficking ring. Move quickly, secure the area, and be ready for resistance." The police stormed the facility, their movements precise and coordinated. Officers fanned out, breaking into units one by one, while others headed straight for the office. The initial units contained nothing but mundane storage, boxes of old furniture, outdated electronics, and forgotten keepsakes. But as they moved deeper into the facility, the atmosphere shifted. One of the officers discovered a unit filled with children's belongings, toys, clothes, and school supplies, all eerily out of place in the cold, industrial setting. In the office, Laura and her team uncovered detailed records, ledgers containing names, locations, and transactions. It was undeniable evidence of Kane's operation. But Kane himself was nowhere to be found. As the team continued searching, one of the officers called out from the far end of the facility. "We've got something." Laura and William rushed to the scene, their hearts pounding. Inside one of the units, they found a hidden compartment. When they pried it open, they discovered a stack of photographs, many of them showing children who had likely been victims of the trafficking ring. William's hands trembled as he sifted through the photos. Then he froze. There she was, Amelia. Her young face stared back at him, her expression one of quiet fear. The photograph was dated 2 years after her disappearance. "She was alive," William whispered, his voice breaking. "She was alive after they took her." Laura placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're getting closer, Judge. This isn't over." Though the raid had uncovered crucial evidence, Kane remained at large. Laura's team immediately issued an alert, and roadblocks were set up around the city. William, meanwhile, couldn't tear his eyes away from the photograph of Amelia. The hope that had been reignited now burned brighter than ever. For the first time in years, he felt they were closing in. "Amelia," he murmured, clutching the photo to his chest. "I'm coming for you. I swear I'll bring you home." The air in the courthouse felt heavy the morning after the raid. Judge William Hendricks sat in his chambers, staring at the photograph of Amelia that had been uncovered during the operation. It was a bittersweet discovery, proof she had been alive after her disappearance, but also a grim reminder of the horrors she had likely endured. William's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Detective Laura Grant. "William, we've made progress," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. "The evidence we found at the storage facility has given us a lead. Kane was spotted leaving a warehouse on the outskirts of town just hours after we raided the storage units. Do we know if he's still there?" William asked, his voice tight. "We're not sure, but we've tracked his movements through surveillance. He's moving fast, trying to cover his tracks. We need to act quickly before he disappears again," Laura explained. "Then let's not waste any time," William said, his resolve firm. Before the team could mobilize, another unexpected development unfolded. Marcus West, the defendant who had led them to this point, requested to speak with Laura. When Laura arrived at the holding cell, Marcus looked more nervous than ever. His usual bravado had been replaced by a deep unease. "I need a deal," Marcus said quickly. "I know more about Kane, but if I spill, I need protection. That guy has eyes everywhere. He'll come after me if he finds out I talked." Laura crossed her arms. "What do you know, Marcus? We're not making deals unless your information is solid." Marcus hesitated, glancing around as if someone might overhear. "Kane doesn't just use warehouses. He's got a safe house. A place he goes when things get too hot. I don't know the exact address, but it's somewhere near the docks. He keeps everything important there, his records, his money, and other things." Laura's eyes narrowed. "What other things?" "People," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Kids, women. He doesn't let them stay in one place for too long, but if you find the safe house, you'll find him." Armed with this new information, Laura and her team immediately began canvassing the area near the docks. The industrial zone was a sprawling maze of abandoned warehouses, storage units, and shipping containers. Kane could have hidden anywhere, and time was not on their side. William couldn't stay away. Though it wasn't protocol for a judge to be so deeply involved in an investigation, this was his daughter they were searching for. He drove to the docks, determined to be there when they found Kane, or Amelia. As the police fanned out, William stood with Laura, scanning the area. "If Marcus's information is correct," Laura said, "Kane won't be alone. He'll have security, maybe even armed guards. This could get dangerous." "I'm willing to take that risk," William said, his voice steady. Hours of searching finally paid off when one of Laura's officers found a suspicious building tucked behind a row of shipping containers. The windows were boarded up, and a single unmarked van was parked outside. "This has to be it," Laura said, signaling for her team to surround the building. The officers moved swiftly, their weapons drawn, as they breached the front entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. The building was dimly lit, with flickering bulbs casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they moved through the rooms, they found evidence of Kane's operation, ledgers, counterfeit IDs, and stacks of cash. But the most chilling discovery came when they opened a locked door at the back of the building. Inside was a group of frightened children and young women, their faces pale and gaunt. They flinched as the officers entered, unsure if they were being rescued or recaptured. "You're safe now," Laura said gently, motioning for her team to help them. "We're here to get you out." As the rescued victims were escorted out, William's focus remained on finding Kane. Moving through the building with Laura, they reached a small office at the end of a hallway. Kane was inside. The man who had haunted William's nightmares for years sat calmly at a desk, a smug smile on his face. "Judge Hendricks," he said smoothly, as though greeting an old friend. "I was wondering when you'd catch up to me." William's fists clenched, but Laura placed a hand on his shoulder, reminding him to stay composed. "Kane," Laura said, stepping forward, "you're under arrest for human trafficking, kidnapping, and countless other charges. Put your hands where I can see them." Kane didn't move. "You've got nothing on me," he sneered. "You think a few scared kids and some paperwork will hold up in court? I've walked away from worse." William's voice cut through the tension. "You won't walk away this time," he said, his tone icy. "Because I'll make sure every shred of evidence is used against you. And this time, you're not just facing the law, you're facing me." As Kane was handcuffed and led out of the building, William's attention turned to the rescued victims. He scanned each face, his heart pounding with hope and fear. But Amelia wasn't among them. Laura approached him, her expression a mix of triumph and regret. "We've got Kane, and the victims are safe, but she's not here." William nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "It's a step forward," he said quietly. "But the search isn't over." He looked at the photograph of Amelia, now worn and creased from being in his pocket. "We'll find her," he murmured to himself. No matter how long it takes. The night after Kane's arrest, Judge William Hendricks sat in his office, staring at the stack of evidence collected during the raid. Despite the victory of capturing Kane and rescuing his victims, William couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of disappointment. Amelia wasn't there. The question still lingered: where was she? And how deeply was Kane involved in her disappearance? Detective Laura Grant entered the room, holding a file. "We've started going through the documents from Kane's safe house," she said, her voice tinged with both urgency and weariness. "There's something you need to see." Laura opened the file and handed William a piece of paper. It was a shipping manifest, listing dates, locations, and initials next to names. One entry caught William's attention: the initials AH next to a location and a date, 2 years after Amelia's disappearance. "What is this?" William asked, his voice trembling. "It's a ledger from Kane's trafficking operation," Laura explained. "The initials match other victims' records. It suggests that Amelia, AH, was transported to another location years after her disappearance." William's hands gripped the paper tightly. "Where?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The manifest lists a warehouse in Chicago," Laura said. "It was one of Kane's hubs before the operation there was dismantled. We're pulling all the records we can to figure out what happened to her after that." While Laura and her team worked to trace the Chicago lead, Marcus West remained in custody. Though he was far from trustworthy, his information had proven useful before, and William believed he might know more. William arranged for a one-on-one meeting with Marcus in the courthouse holding cell. When Marcus was brought in, he looked wary, his usual bravado replaced with unease. "Judge Hendricks," Marcus said, sitting down. "Why am I here again?" "I've told you everything I know." "Not everything," William replied, his tone sharp. He placed the shipping manifest on the table. "What do you know about Kane's operations in Chicago?" Marcus's eyes flickered to the paper, and he shifted in his seat. "I wasn't involved in all of that," he muttered. "I only worked for Kane for a little while. The Chicago stuff was way above my level." "But you've heard things," William pressed. "If you know anything, anything at all, about what happened to the people he moved, you need to tell me." Marcus hesitated, his gaze darting around the room. Finally, he sighed. "There was talk," he said quietly. "About some kids being sent to places where they wouldn't be found. Chicago was one of those places. Do you remember anything specific about Amelia?" William asked, his voice trembling with restrained emotion. Marcus swallowed hard. "I didn't know names. But there was one girl Kane was obsessed with keeping off the radar. He said she was too valuable to let go. That's all I know." The information Marcus provided was thin, but it was enough to reignite William's determination. Laura agreed to contact the Chicago Police Department and coordinate an investigation into the warehouse listed in the ledger. "I'm going with you," William said as Laura briefed her team. "William, you can't," Laura said firmly. "This is a police operation. It's too dangerous, and you're too close to this." "She's my daughter," William countered, his voice filled with conviction. "I need to be there." Laura sighed, recognizing the resolve in his eyes. "Fine," she relented. "But you stay back. Let us handle the heavy lifting." Days later, William and Laura's team arrived in Chicago. The warehouse was located in an industrial district, surrounded by decaying buildings and rusted shipping containers. It had been abandoned for years, but Laura believed it might still hold clues. The team split up, searching every corner of the building. William stayed near the entrance, his heart pounding as he listened to the officers call out their findings. "Over here," one officer shouted. Laura and William rushed to the far side of the warehouse, where the officer had uncovered a hidden room behind a false wall. Inside, they found old furniture, children's belongings, and a stack of photographs. William's hands shook as he picked up one of the photos. It showed a group of children sitting on the floor, their expressions a mix of fear and exhaustion. His breath caught when he saw her, Amelia. She looked older, her hair longer, but her eyes were unmistakable. "She was here," William said, his voice breaking. "She was here." As the team continued to search, another officer found a small box tucked beneath the floorboards. Inside were handwritten letters, many of them addressed to names William didn't recognize. But one letter, written in a child's handwriting, stopped him cold. The letter was addressed to Dad. With trembling hands, William read the words, "Dear Dad, I don't know if you're looking for me, but I hope you are. I miss you every day. I still have the locket you gave me. I won't stop believing you'll find me. Love, Amelia." Tears streamed down William's face as he clutched the letter. It was proof that Amelia hadn't given up hope, even after years of separation. "She's alive," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "She's still out there." The search of the warehouse provided invaluable evidence, more photographs, letters, and records that gave the police a clearer picture of Kane's operation. While they still didn't know where Amelia was, the trail was warmer than ever. Laura placed a hand on William's shoulder. "We're closer than we've ever been," she said. "We'll find her." William nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. "I won't stop until I bring her home." The discovery of Amelia's letter fueled William's determination like nothing else. For years, he had lived with the crushing weight of uncertainty, the endless questions about what had happened to his daughter. Now, he had proof, she was alive and still hoping for him to find her. Detective Laura Grant and her team pored over the evidence gathered from the Chicago warehouse. The photographs, letters, and ledgers painted a horrifying picture of Kane's trafficking network, but they also provided a clearer trail to follow. Every detail brought them one step closer to Amelia. 2 days after the raid, Laura called William with an urgent update. "We've tracked one of Kane's former associates to a small property in Indiana," she said. "His name is Eric Dalton. He's been off the radar for years, but we believe he knows where Kane might be keeping the remaining victims. Do you think Amelia could be there?" William asked, his voice tight with anticipation. "It's possible," Laura admitted. "Dalton worked closely with Kane, and the property matches the description of one of their safe houses. We're organizing a raid, but we need to move carefully. Dalton is dangerous, and we can't risk tipping him off." Laura's team spent hours preparing for the operation. Every detail was scrutinized to ensure the safety of both the officers and any potential victims. William insisted on being involved, despite Laura's repeated warnings about the risks. "This is personal for me," he said firmly. "I won't stand on the sidelines." Reluctantly, Laura agreed to let him join the operation in a limited capacity. "But you stay in the command vehicle," she said. "No exceptions." As they approached Dalton's property, the tension in the air was palpable. The property was isolated, surrounded by dense woods, with a single dirt road leading to the house. Officers positioned themselves strategically, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Under the cover of darkness, the raid began. Officers moved swiftly and silently, breaching the perimeter and surrounding the house. Laura led the charge, her weapon drawn as she entered the building. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp wood and mildew. The house was eerily quiet, save for the creak of floorboards as the officers searched each room. "Clear," one officer called out from the front. "Clear," echoed another from the second floor. But as Laura reached the basement, she found something chilling, a hidden door, partially obscured by old furniture. "Down here," she called, motioning for backup. The door led to a narrow staircase descending into a dark, windowless room. Laura's flashlight illuminated the space, revealing a small group of frightened young women and children huddled together. Their faces were pale, their expressions a mix of fear and hope. "You're safe now," Laura said gently. "We're here to help." William, unable to stay in the command vehicle any longer, rushed to the scene as soon as it was secure. He pushed past the officers, his heart pounding as he scanned the faces of the rescued victims. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Amelia, are you here?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the corner of the room, a young woman stepped forward. Her face was gaunt, her hair longer and darker than he remembered, but her eyes, those same piercing blue eyes he had memorized so many years ago, were unmistakable. "Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. William froze, his breath catching in his throat. "Amelia," he choked out. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "It's me." In an instant, William closed the distance between them, wrapping her in a tight embrace. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he said, his voice breaking. "I never gave up hope," Amelia whispered, clinging to him. "I knew you'd find me." While William and Amelia shared their emotional reunion, Laura and her team secured the rest of the property. Eric Dalton was found hiding in a nearby shed, armed but quickly subdued by the officers. "You're going away for a long time," Laura told him as he was handcuffed and led to a police vehicle. Dalton sneered but said nothing, his expression defiant. Back at the house, William held Amelia tightly, unwilling to let her go. Laura approached, her face softening at the sight of their reunion. "We got him," she said. "Dalton is in custody, and we'll make sure he pays for what he's done." As the night wore on, Amelia was taken to the hospital for a thorough medical evaluation. William stayed by her side, holding her hand and reassuring her that she was safe. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said softly. "I thought the same," Amelia admitted, her voice trembling. "But I kept believing you'd find me. That's what kept me going." For the first time in years, William felt a sense of peace. Though the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, they had found each other again, and that was all that mattered. The sun rose over the city, casting a soft glow on the hospital where Amelia was resting. After years of pain and uncertainty, William Hendricks sat by her bedside, his heart finally at ease. He watched her sleep, her chest rising and falling steadily, and for the first time in over a decade, he felt whole again. Amelia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Dad," she said, her voice hoarse but filled with warmth. "I'm here," William replied, leaning closer. "I'm not going anywhere." The doctors had assured William that Amelia was in stable condition. Though malnourished and visibly exhausted, she had no serious injuries. But the emotional scars, those would take much longer to heal. Amelia looked at her father, her eyes filled with both relief and fear. "What happens now?" she asked softly. William squeezed her hand. "We take it one step at a time," he said. "You're safe now. No one will ever hurt you again." The hospital staff arranged for Amelia to meet with a trauma counselor, someone trained to help victims of trafficking. William was determined to ensure she received the support she needed, but he also knew they had to rebuild their relationship, one built on trust and patience. Later that day, Detective Laura Grant visited the hospital. She brought updates on the case against Victor Kane and Eric Dalton. "Kane is in custody," Laura said, sitting across from William. "The evidence we found at the warehouse and safe house is more than enough to convict him. Dalton, too. They'll both face justice for what they've done." Amelia flinched at the mention of their names, but she listened intently. "Will they ever be able to hurt anyone again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," Laura assured her. "We'll make sure of that. You're brave for surviving what they put you through, Amelia. And because of you, we've saved others from their grasp." Over the next few weeks, Amelia slowly began to open up about her time in captivity. She recounted moments of fear and hopelessness but also spoke of the strength she found in the memory of her father. "I kept the locket you gave me," she told him one evening. "It was the only thing that made me feel connected to you. I held on to it, even when they tried to take it away." William's eyes filled with tears. "That locket brought us back together," he said. And it's a reminder that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope. William took time off from his duties as a judge to focus on Amelia's recovery. They moved into a quieter part of the city, away from the noise and chaos that had defined their lives for so long. Amelia began therapy sessions and slowly reintegrated into a sense of normalcy. She took up painting, a hobby she had loved as a child, and found solace in expressing herself through art. "You're talented," William said one day as he admired one of her paintings. It was a vibrant depiction of a sunrise over a calm ocean. "It feels like a fresh start," Amelia said with a small smile. Inspired by their journey, William and Amelia decided to use their experience to help others. Together, they founded an organization dedicated to supporting families of missing children and survivors of trafficking. During their first public event, Amelia spoke to a room filled with parents, survivors, and law enforcement officers. Her voice was steady, her message clear. "I was lost for years," she said. "But I never gave up hope, and neither did my father. If you're searching for someone you love, don't stop. They're out there, waiting for you to find them." The audience erupted into applause, and William couldn't have been prouder. Months turned into years, and though the scars of the past remained, William and Amelia found joy in their new life. Their bond, forged through unimaginable pain, became unbreakable. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Amelia turned to her father. "Do you ever wonder why this happened to us?" she asked. William thought for a moment, then replied, "I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing: it brought us closer. And it taught me never to take a single moment for granted." Amelia smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for never giving up on me, Dad." William kissed the top of her head. "You were always worth fighting for, Amelia. Always." As the sun dipped below the horizon, their hearts were full, not with regret, but with hope for the future. This story is a powerful reminder of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. William's relentless pursuit of the truth and Amelia's strength to survive against all odds show us that even in the darkest times, hope can lead to light. Their reunion, after so many years of heartbreak, is a testament to the fact that love never stops searching, and justice, though sometimes delayed, is always worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart as much as it did mine, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and unforgettable tales. And let us know in the comments, what did you think of this story? Where are you watching from? Your thoughts mean so much to us.